All right, brother. So you have this very interesting story I didn't know about you, right?
Mm,
And I think it's like a really big thing and it's unusual, especially in this day and age. However, back in the day, it used to be kind of a thing that some societies of people used to do all the time.
yeah, rites of passage.
Rites of passage, exactly. And some people will call it cruel and unusual, others will call it badass,
Hmm.
and others will call it they'll see it as what it really is. Um which ultimately after the end, after the survival, after the problems and the complications and what you learn, what you have to go through to get through this, no matter how bad it is, easy parts, any of it, no matter what it is, it's the entire thing is based on one thing, which is becoming a man and being a man. And I think that in society today that we're losing that. We're losing that a lot with men testosterone, the loss of testosterone, the loss of sperm counts, the loss of everything. We're
Yep.
seeing what they are doing today, which is destroying what a man is supposed to be. Our military is weak, our men are weak, our politicians are weak, our government's weak, our entire country is the weakest it has ever been,
Hmm.
even before it was a country. So this story interests me a lot, and I just would like to start. Let's just go. Just give us a summarized version of how this starts and what happened, if you would, and how old.
Okay, so you want me to start with like why it happened and what happened? You want me to just go through the whole thing? What do we want here?
Yeah, I want to hear the whole story, but I want you to kind of give everyone a background of like what we're talking about and how old you were and why the whole
Okay.
why it all before it started, why and what.
Well, I was 16 years old. Just must have turned 16, as a matter of fact, because my birthday is in the summertime. I was in between junior and senior year in high school, and I was rebelling and trying to figure out who I am as a person. Meanwhile, living under the roof of my mother, who wanted me to still do things her way. So naturally, we butted heads, caused a lot of friction in the household, and eventually, my mom had her breaking point where I was going to counselors. I was going to counselors. We'll just leave it at that. I grew up on a farm at that point in my life, and so I was working my ass off as forms of punishment, and enough was enough for everybody. And my counselor suggested to my mom that she sends me to this wilderness adventure camp experience. And normally, when this is done, it's multiple kids. It's a group activity, and you would essentially be dropped off by your parent um, at a meeting spot, and you would be handed off to an individual who takes you up into the mountains, teaches you how to survive for half of the experience. Then the other half, you put it into practice. You're left completely alone, and then you are reunited with your family after getting the humbling experience of a lifetime. That in it of itself, that's it in a nutshell. Now, what ended up happening in my case is I was the only one who was signed up. So it was a very much one-on-one thing, and all the way through and through. And that's about as much of an intro as I can give you for the experience.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. And I mean, I have heard parts of the story, so this is new for me as well. So I don't know the entirety of it. I had something kind of like this happen, but it wasn't really on purpose with it. It was more like I'm letting them go camping for 3 days, and we had food, but we ended up everything we ate was scavenged out of the waters, out of the forest, everything. So what happened on day one?
So, first thing, I guess, just to back it up a little further than day one. So, the to set you up for what I was in for, my mother had to sign a paper saying that if anything happened to me while I was out, that there could be no legal repercussions against the person or the organization that he was representing, and I think it was his own kind of deal, to be honest. But anyways, yeah, no legal repercussions. So that in of itself was kind of unsettling for me. I never took it serious. He gave my mom a list of things that I was allowed to bring, and he says you can bring as much of this list or as little as you'd like, but remember, the less you bring, the less you're going to deal with. And I, of course, I thought I was trying to call my mom's bluff all the way up to
Mm,
basically the moment we left. I'm like, bullshit, she's not going to put me
mm.
through this.
You thought she was full
And
of shit,
yep,
and
and
you
she
didn't
was,
know this guy.
no,
You've
no, I
never
never,
met this guy before.
never in my life. My mom never even met the guy. And so basically,
That's fucking crazy, dude.
yeah, and so I think I was a little bit in the state of denial about the entire thing.
Hmm.
But the list of essentials was couple pairs of clothes, of socks, of underwear, a sweater, some hiking boots or shoes, whatever, a tarp, and a knife, and a flint rod, and some iodine water purification tablets, a canteen, a little bag of flour, a little bit of yeast, and some oats, and a can of tomato sauce. And then that was pretty much it. And so, anyways, I go up there with this stuff. First of all, so my mom's like, "You're going to be carrying all this stuff on your back. You better try to get used to this." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." So, we take this long drive up into Idaho, and they take me way out to the boonies, and they drop me off with this guy. His name was Forrest. And great guy. He was really cool, but it's a kind of a big, burly, foresty kind of guy. And she drops me off, and I say my goodbyes, and still hasn't fully hit me what I'm really going to go through. They take off, and then he leaves me there, or him and I sit down, and we're talking about why I feel like I'm in this situation. What do I think I'm going to be experiencing? And then he, after we talked a little bit, we decide, we're going to start driving up into the mountains and begin this whole journey. So we drove for probably about 3 more hours up into the mountains, and we got to this park, or this hiking trail called Genie Lake, I believe, in Idaho. Well, I think it's in Boise. I'm not sure 100%, but anyways, so we start hiking, and what the heck? Sorry. We start hiking, and the first night we probably hiked maybe an hour and a half, and he had me take an egg with me. I forgot about this. He had me take an egg, and he's like, "This egg is your responsibility through this entire experience. And when we finish, at the end of day 7, I want you to show me that this egg is still intact, that you've protected it, that through this entire experience, this is your baby." And you know what I thought? I thought I'd be a smart ass, and I'd leave it in the Jeep. And so, oh, day 7, let me go get the egg out of the Jeep, and nobody's any wiser.
Oh
And
shit.
so we're about 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours into the hike, and he's like, "Let's take a break." So we sit down, and he says, "Show me the egg." And I'm like, and so I'm like, kind of, oh shit. And I said, "Oh, I can't find it." And he's like, "What do you mean you can't find it?" And he's like, "Where'd you leave it?" I said, "Oh, I think it's in the Jeep." He's like, "All right, I'm gonna wait right here. You go back and get it." And I'm like, "Wait,
Oh.
by myself?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going. You're the one who forgot it. Go get it. And I'll be waiting right here." And I was so taken back by that. I'm like, "Wait, this dude is going to make me hike back through a trail. I don't know where the hell I'm going." And so, anyways, I walked all the way there, got the damn egg out of the car, and walked all the way back. And he says, "This is it. Don't lose the egg. Don't let anything happen to the egg."
He got
So,
you.
anyways, so we keep hiking, and we're going deeper and deeper into the mountains. And we'd take little pit stops, and he would like counsel me a little bit. He'd be like, "Hey, let me run a couple things by you. What do you think about this?" And one thing I'll never forget, he said to me, "When you're in a relationship, Nathan, what is your thoughts on how it works? Do you need that person? Do you feel like that person completes you? Do you feel like they're your other half?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I guess so. That's what music and movies and everything leads you to believe. You complete me. I'm nothing without you. I
I
need
need
you."
you. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he's like, "Nathan, no, that is actually a very toxic way to think." He's like, "A successful relationship works when there are two wholes, when two
Hmm.
people are 100%, and
Yep.
then they come
Hold
together
on,
and
hold on, hold on, hold on. let me cut you out there. I'm me and you're you, and we're gonna do us just together as a team.
Hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
And when you have somebody, he was explaining to me, when you have somebody who needs somebody else, first of all, when you cross the threshold of needing and wanting, you diminish your own self-worth and you put an unnecessary amount of pressure and responsibility on somebody when
Mm-hmm.
you're not it's not a balanced relationship any longer. And so
Mm-hmm.
he went into this whole it changed my life. That
Mm-hmm.
one thing alone, if nothing else from this experience, that one bit of advice, I was like, oh my God, I never thought of it like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what, that used to drive girlfriends that I had crazy when I would tell
Mm-hmm.
them, oh, I don't need you. I
Yeah.
want you in my life, but I'm
Yeah.
perfectly fine. I was fine before I met
Don't
you, and I'll
need
be
you.
fine after.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something
Yeah.
I learned over the past 5 years, I'd say.
Yeah.
With that, and it's really getting to yourself is where you learn that. And
Yes.
people these days seem to not really be able to get to themselves. They're like, I'd rather avoid myself. I'm gonna do this and that like everyone else. You really got to find out who you are, and you got to love it. You gotta, and that's why they say you got to love yourself before you can love anyone else. And that was always a stupid thing, which I believe is more like love comes with like knowing, like understanding. People need to know. And it's not that you're going to be like, I know who I am. Like, I know this and that and that and this, but you'll start seeing things like, I like doing this. Like, I'm this and this isn't going to change about me. So when you have these things that you're like, this will never change. Then when you're younger and you're like, I believe this and I like this, but I will throw it away for this person if they don't like it. No, it's called incompatibility. Don't force
Mm-hmm.
it upon yourself. You know what I mean? Just like the world with everything, when you're walking through your day and day life, things like that. Like, I don't agree with this. I'm not going to slide in line and put on a mask. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Or just anything even more simple. I'm not going to grab that fruit at the grocery store because I don't like the way it looks or how they taste with this, but this person's, or something, but it's there and they're making you feel, you got to do who you are all of the time and get comfortable with doing that before you can expect to find someone else who is at that level. With anything in life, you're not there. Nothing's going to hold you the fuck up. You got to hold yourself the fuck up. And then something else has to be strong pedestaled as well to hold itself the fuck up. Anything in life. And then you two just can grind and see how fucking far you can go with it. You can't be, I'm leveraging you and they're leveraging me. You got to have that strength. And that's awesome. You realize that on that. That is one of the biggest things you could have learned. And
Yeah.
your
It
mom
definitely helps.
underpaid, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's quite the lesson there. But
Yeah.
continue. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's all right. And it's funny because so how many people think that, they love somebody, they become attracted and they fall in love with somebody and then they start dating and or whatever, however the timeline works out, but then they try to change the person. And ultimately then they dump the person because they're not who they ever, you're nothing like you used to be when I first met you. Yeah, well, you fucking turned me into a mess. That's why, your insecurities were taken out on me so much that I've become I don't even know who the hell I am either.
Yeah,
And
or you never gave the time to meet me.
right,
That too. That happens a lot where it's like you're not the same person I met when you were flirting with me at this time.
yeah,
And it's like you never took the fucking chance to meet. You know what I mean?
right.
Like, and it's both parties. They never took that real chance. You know what I mean? Because
It's
they
all
go,
surface
oh, this
level.
is this person in this situation. But really what you want to find is something that's or someone something or someone that's like that in their daily life, because that's what you're trying to strive for, I'd suppose. I mean, people is daily life, but just in that one moment at this one party doing this one thing, you're not, oh, I met at that. No shit. It's funny.
So, anyways, moving forward with the what happened. So we continued hiking until basically the sun started setting, and we ended up walking to a point where I could see some people off, in the bushes on the side. And there was a very, very small cabin. We're like a 3 hour hike up into the mountains after driving 5 hours away from civilization, up into the mountains, like we're quite a ways out there. And so, anyways, after hiking, we see these people off to the right, and there's a very, very small cabin, and there was a little hut next to the cabin. And Forrest says to me, "Hey, Nathan, we're going to do a sweat lodge. Have you ever heard of a sweat lodge?" I said, no. And he's like, okay, well, you're going to learn today. So we go up and introduce ourselves to this group, and it was like these Native American guys, and then some, average guys who were there for the ceremony, and they wanted to, they were there for the sweat lodge. So, anyways, we all introduced each other, and then he says, "All right, Nathan, what we're going to do is we're going to climb into that hut." And the fire over there is some lava rocks that we're going to bring in, and we're going to create a steam room. And he's like, "So get naked." And I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about? I don't want to, I don't." Well, and he's like, "Okay, or you can just get in your boxers, whatever, your underwear, whatever you want to do." But that's how we typically do things in this. So, anyways, I stayed in my boxers. I walk in first and grab a seat. The hut was made out of elk hide, deer hide, and like branches that it was just tall enough sitting on the ground on the earth that our heads were, just skimming above the ceiling. So it was very low to the ground, maybe 3.5, 4 feet, something like that tall, 4 feet. Anyways, pitch black in that motherfucker. And so I'm in there. I'm 16 years old. I'm out of my element. I'm now pretty much naked with a bunch of grown men freaking out kind of. And we're in there. And next thing you know, there's two other guys that pile in on one side, two other guys on the other side. The final guy comes in with the rocks, glowing orange, pink, and yellowy kind of lava stone that have been sitting in a fire pit all day. Brought in with a shovel and set in this little pit in the center of our hut. And then they close the flap. And what he does is he just dumps, well, I don't want to say dumps, I don't know if it was a dump or it was a ladle, but they were pouring water on, and that's all you hear is and what the guy explained to me before, he says, "We're going to go in there, we're going to sweat, and you're going to have a vision." And I'm like, "Okay, what the hell?" I experimented with drugs in the past prior to that. So,
Smoking you out like Snoop Dogg in
yeah,
a car. Yeah,
yeah,
that's exactly
we're in
what's
the
about to
hot
happen.
boxes. Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, steam hits me. It is so flippin' hot. It's not like a sauna. It is, but in a sense, a sauna is a controlled heat. This was, whatever you get kind of thing. And so it is like it feels like 1,000 degrees all of a sudden. I can barely breathe through my nose because it feels like it's burning my sinuses out. Okay, so yeah, they close the flap and it's pitch black in this hut, and they all start taking turns introducing themselves. And I don't remember everybody's name, but it was like some pretty, they had their tribal names, a couple of them, and me and the other couple gentlemen introduced ourselves as our first name. Anyways, so they all start chanting. And so there's this, who who, and they're calling upon the spirits of different, animals and nature. And I'm freaking out, and it's getting hotter and hotter. And then they all take turns one at a time going through and saying something that they want to sweat out and leave behind, some kind of trait that they want to leave behind. And so I hear one guy scream out addiction, one guy scream out gosh darn it. They all had their own personal things, but addiction, mine was lying, because I really couldn't think of what the hell I wanted to leave behind. I was so nervous. I was like, okay, it's my turn. Oh shit. So I said lying. I want to become a more honest person, but we're screaming this out. Okay. We're not just saying, "Oh, I have addiction problems." It's like addiction, oh my God. And I'm freaking out. So anyways, we're in this thing for 45 minutes, man. I thought I was going to die. I got to the point where I had sweat so profusely that there was a puddle of water. Well, it was sweat, a puddle of sweat in my lap where I was sitting cross-legged. And I don't remember doing this, but I must have scooped up the mud that my sweat had created and started smearing it all over my face and body because I was so hot. I mean, I literally thought I was going to die. I'm like, while they're chanting, I said, "Hey, Forrest, how long?" He's like, "Nathan, shh." And there's an instant shut me down. Don't interrupt this. And so I'm like, oh my God, like, how do I get out of this place? 45 minutes, man, of sweating. I come out. Finally, they open they calm things down after we all sweat and screamed and shouted and cried and everything else. They opened the flap and let a little bit of air come in. And basically, when we all filed out one after another, there was a mountain runoff that came down next to the guy's cabin. and it was about maybe 3, 4 feet deep of mountain water, freaking cold as fuck, man, water. And so we go from
Been
this.
hopped in it,
Oh yeah, yeah, we did. So we went
huh?
from freaking I thought I was
Yeah.
gonna die. We're all standing out there now. I'm covered like blackface, man, like covered in mud. And
Mm,
there the guy says, okay, jump in the water. You're first. And I'm like, what do you mean jump in the water? He's like, do it. It's basically like a rebirthing exercise. And I'm like,
yeah.
oh shit. So I dove in, and I'll tell you what, man, I don't really know how to explain that feeling, but
It's
it
a
was
cleansing ritual.
exactly, exactly. You
Hmm.
go from your pores and everything completely open, just draining stuff out of you didn't even know was possible,
Yeah.
into jumping freezing cold, everything tightening back up.
And
Holy
you're 16 years old and just got
16.
signed up for something that your mom told you about, but you thought was bullshit.
Yep.
And this is at the first day. This is
Yeah,
that night.
this is
This
the
is
first
that
day.
night, the first day that this happened. And you're like going, probably this is crazy cool. This is freaking me the fuck out. And
More of that.
right, more of that, but at the same time, like I'm sure you're feeling like the vibes or the energy, and you're going like something about this is like right.
Well, I'll tell you what, my immediate reaction to that was it was amazing, but I was almost angry. And I was frustrated with how could they do this to me? How could my mother
Right.
do this to me?
Right.
And so I
Like
was
I
really the
have to
victim.
do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even
Like it
though
was just
technically you don't.
sure. I could have just sat my ass down and said, I'm not
Yep.
going anywhere.
Hmm. Well, you could have stopped when he told you to go back to the truck. You just sat there.
Yep.
I mean,
Because
it's
it's
still
still there.
legally, you wanted
Yeah.
to do this. And I think your mom underpaid. Say it multiple times throughout this. I think your mom underpaid.
I agree. Because well, we'll get to that. But
We'll get to
so
it. We'll get to it.
following that experience, we all shook hands, it gave each other hugs and got a bottle of water, and then we continued on. And so Forrest and I kept on hiking. We got dressed again, kept on hiking, and that night we decided, okay, it's getting late, time to set up a little campsite. And so what we did is we slept under the stars. Like, he had me bring one of those little pads that you open the cap at the end and it kind of inflates to maybe like 2 inches or so. So it's a small little sleeping pad. So I had that. And I slept on the ground. He slept on the ground because I was like, where's your tent? What are we going to sleep in a tent? He's like, no, we're sleeping on the ground. I'm like, what about bugs? He's like, what about him? I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, we slept. And I remember, first of all, I was energized. I was so energized I couldn't sleep. And I'm sitting there just looking up at the sky, hearing the noise of the wilderness all around me. Honestly, freaked the fuck out. I'm like, what? This is insane. This is insane. I could have died in a freaking sweat lodge steam room today. I could have died, So I'm like, this is insane. Well,
From
anyways,
what? From overheating, right?
overheating, yeah.
And now you're about to freeze to death.
And now I'm about to freeze to death out in the open, out in the elements, sleeping on the ground. But I remember falling asleep, staring at the sky, and that was the last image I saw. We had a fire that was slowly burning out, small little fire, and I just look. I have the opening of the trees up, above my head, and I just see all the stars, and I slowly just fell asleep. And I remember the next morning waking up, twigs in my hair, freaking ants crawling on me, and I'm like, oh, freaking out, getting it all off me. But I said, where do I go to the bathroom? And he's like, well, you got to take a shit. And I said, yeah, I got to take a shit. And he's like, go dig a hole. And I'm like, well, dig a hole? What about like wiping? He's like, grab some pine needles. I'm like, are you kidding me? And so he's like, no, I'm serious. And you better make sure you dig a hole. Do not leave that above ground. And I was like, oh my God. So yeah, fucking went and dug a hole and took a shit in it. And that was my first time ever doing something like
Wait,
that.
you
And it
didn't
changed
wipe
my
your
life.
ass with pine needles, right?
No, what he did is he gave me one of those little pocket tissue.
Okay. I would
He
not
said,
wipe my ass. For anyone out there, this is medical advice. I would not wipe my ass with pine needles.
what's the,
That would hurt so bad, dude. That's like guaranteed to stab your asshole like 60 times. That's what is
and
that?
still get
He's
shit on your
fucking with
hands.
you. That's funny. He said that.
Yeah.
He's fucking with you. He was going figure it the fuck out, is what he was saying.
That's right. And
That's
yeah,
exactly.
he ended up throwing me one of those pocket tissue packs, and he said, "This is it. Don't use it all in one go." And so yeah, I was very reserved with my pocket tissue toilet paper. But anyways, the next morning, day two, he gives me, so each day he had, I had a little journal that he had me bring up there, and he was having me write in this journal and go through these little work, it wasn't a worksheet. It was like, hey, draw a circle, then draw a cross in the circle. And each section of the cross, we're going to write something in there. And we were going through these lessons. And what he was doing, I don't know if you've ever heard of this book, but there's a book called The Four Agreements to Personal Freedom by Don Miguel Ruiz. Great book. And it's a real short read, maybe 200 pages, but it's about Toltec wisdom. It's like a ancient Indian tribe, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mexican Indian tribes. Anyways, but
I'm gonna
yeah,
let me guess. The whole time it has you just arguing with yourself.
well, no, no, not necessarily. It was more like one of the four agreements is don't take anything personal. The reason you don't take anything personal is because the things that people project out and say about
Mhm.
you are coming from issues within their own psyche, within their own
Mhm.
person. And
But to do that, you have to argue with yourself because part of you really, really, really wants to take that in.
well, so what do you mean? What?
If someone, you're saying if someone like don't take it seriously, like if someone says something right about you, you want to take that standard value. Most people are like, I'm too good for that. Then they'll still in their mind, they'll be like, but is that true? Is there real? Is there any hold to it? And
Sure.
then you got to be on the other side. Most people don't have that, or they don't realize they could have that capability where you're on the other side going, this is stupid. Why do you
Yeah.
even fucking care about what they would think, even if they did think it? And why do you care if it's true?
Sure. And
You
you can
know?
even look at it from a perspective of like, who hurt you? Like why
Mhm.
do you feel this way? What has gone
Exactly.
wrong?
Well,
So
people are always supposed to be defensive because of like social economical norms. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Like little girl, like they say stereotypically, like with magazines and little girls and like seeing, fake boobs, fake butts. This is what a woman is. And but in reality, plastic surgery, she looks like shit in person. It's all photoshopped, and she's a shit of a parent if she even could have been one, if she could have
yeah.
got a man to say.
Mhm.
That's kind of the idea is your only enemy throughout all of this, Nathan,
Mhm.
was yourself. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. And
Certainly.
that's what you figure out at the end is you have that power. And a lot of these movies say you have the power, but they don't explain that. They don't explain the only person keeping you from having that power is yourself.
That's
You
right.
know,
And
the
you
only
know what? That's a
person
great
holding you
point you
down or
bring up.
back or everything is yourself. Yeah.
I kind of thought that the whole time, but I never put it together like that. But you're right. The whole thing I was battling up there was myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because there's actually a game. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's called Celeste.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a platformer game, incredibly hard, but it's about a little girl, or and not it's not a little girl. It's about a woman who climbs a mountain, and her mountain is basically representing her psyche, her emotional journey through life, and dealing with an ultra ego version of herself, the yang. There's the
Mm-hmm.
yin, the yang, the
Yep.
dark and the light, and it's the dark side of her constantly trying to hold her back the entire way up the mountain and
Mm-hmm.
down the mountain. It's about, and so, anyways, that's basically what my whole experience was. Me battling myself, understanding myself, forgiving myself, and working with myself as one complete being, balanced,
Mm-hmm.
coming back a new person. And it just kind of came together
Yeah.
right in the moment.
Yeah. Because the whole time you were up there, right? Especially as a 16-year-old, I can, think as a 16-year-old, I would have been pissed at my mom. I would have been
Yep.
blaming everything that was happening to me on to her, not the fact that why are you overcoming this? Why don't you take use of this? Why don't you adapt and overcome? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And why don't you take what's going on in front of you and take the best out of it? It's like another level there. But that's the thing is, yeah, I would have been at 16 years old. I would have been sitting there going, fuck you, fuck this, fuck, this is my mom's fault. She's doing this to me. And it's like,
Yep.
no, she signed you up for it and had you do it. But like we said before, you could have sat your ass down outside the truck and they would have had to take you home. So after that point, after going back to that truck and getting that egg, like in most people, people in general, but boys, men, people aren't growing up getting this. Is that And you'll hear him say it, you make the best at everything. That's not the truth. It's that you're putting yourself through this, and you should probably realize or find out why the fuck you're not doing it better than you are right now.
Sure.
Why the fuck aren't you doing this as good as you can to take everything out of it, to understand all of it by the end of it? Instead, we're just sitting there, people just sitting there going, this is because of my mom. It's like you could have sat down as soon as he gave you that egg and said, kicked your feet and gone like one of them little kids in Walmart, the little brats. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. You did this. And I love it. Love this
Yeah,
shit.
yeah. There was a lot going on up there that I didn't even realize, and I was too busy playing the victim. But it's all part of the process. It's a journey of self discovery and overcoming. And anyways, so the first few and a half, 3.5 days or so, were focused on trying to get me acquainted with life in the woods, how to start a fire using a bundle, whatever tinder bundle you can come up with, and a flint rod, how to make char cloth, which essentially he had me cut up a rag, use an Altoids can, put the rag folded up in little square pieces, fold them up and put them inside the tin can, poke a couple holes on the top and sit it right outside of the coals of the fire, so that way smoke kind of rolls into it but doesn't light it on fire. And what you're left with when you pull it out is cloth that, if you just get a teeny little tiny spark on, will start igniting, and you can start a fire very easily with that stuff, with the little scraps of cloth. So anyways, it's all about teaching me how to survive, how to purify my water. I'm like, what do we drink? He's like, you see water right there running down the mountain. I want you to get some of that, and I want you to put the iodine tablets in there, let it sit for whatever period of time it said, and then you can drink it. And so we were drinking fresh water from mountain runoffs, and we were up near the top. Like, we're not fudging around too much where bears are shitting and pissing in the. I wouldn't put it past it, but we made sure that we weren't getting whatever kind of sick viruses or bacteria are up there in ourselves. So the first few days were about learning to survive. Meanwhile, integrated with lessons about what psychological lessons. And each day we would focus on another agreement from the four agreements. So one was, don't take things personally. Two, I mean, I'm not going to go in order, but another one was, be impeccable to your word. And basically, that if you say you're going to do something, you do it. You don't no half measures, none of that stuff. If you say you're going to be there on time, you be there on time, whatever it is. So these four agreements we're learning as I'm going up there. And so after a few days of this, what we did is, he takes me up. He taught me the basics. And the night before he's going to leave me on my own, we're sitting around this fire, and he has me paint on a board, a what I would symbolize as a boy becoming a man. And so I actually have pictures of this stuff, but the picture I drew was a stick figure, kind of huddled up like this, knees up, kind of in the fetal position, sitting upwards. And I had basically darker colors around, like an aura energy field, as it gets further and further out, becoming lighter colors on the spectrum. And he says, how does that represent the journey from a boy going to a man? And I said, well, it's basically me up here, feeling sorry for myself, all my negative emotions and feelings, everything going on right now. And as I venture through this experience, that learning to understand it and move beyond it. And he's like, okay, perfect, I want you to put that board aside. And next, what he had me do was bust out these letters that I didn't even know existed. He went to all my family members, and my son's mother at the time, we were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time. So my son's mother, she wrote something to me as well. He collected a letter from everybody: my dad, my stepmom, my sister, my stepfather, my mother, etc. And he has me read these letters, and it's basically, he wanted my family and friends to offer me encouragement, and be honest about how the person I was being made them feel, but also mostly focused on you can do this. This is going to make you into a better person kind of attitude. So I'm reading the letter from my mom and stepdad, very supportive, but also being real with the fact that I was being a little shit. And, they are doing this because they love me, and, they are so proud of me and blah, blah, blah. And then, so I'm going through all these letters, kind of feeling, okay, that's nice. That's nice to see what people have to say about me. I get to my father and my stepmom at the time, and the letter that I'm reading is just ripping my ass apart. You are selfish. This is why we didn't invite you to come during spring break, because of this. And all you ever do is use us. And, we hope that you go up there and you find yourself, because right now the direction you're heading is nowhere good, and blah, 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 all this shit. And I started crying. I started breaking down because I'm like, what the fuck? And he wanted me to read each letter out loud to him. And so I look over at him and he's mortified. And I'm like, I'm struggling to finish the letter. And I said, I'm done. I'm not even going to read it. I crumpled it up and just tossed it to the side. And he says, first of all, Nathan, I'm really sorry that you had to read that. I'm sure that we will find meaning behind it and you will become better because of it. But that is not the assignment that I left for everybody. The assignment was this. And instead, they took this opportunity to just beat you down. So, I'm sorry. But anyway, so that was kind of eye opening, because I didn't realize that that was the kind of person I was being to my father and stepmother. And since then, we've kind of worked through that, and they were going through their own shit at the same time. So, maybe some of it was justified and some of it maybe was a bit excessive. But regardless, it was what it was. So we're now on day 3, I believe. It's the nighttime. I go to bed, and the next morning is getting ready to go up the mountain further by myself now. So this is where everything has been taught to me, and it's time to put it into action and survive for 3 days by myself. And so I'm like, well, what do I eat? What do I eat while I'm up here? Because up to this point, all we had eaten was like trail mix that he brought. And I'm not talking much, like we're talking like just little snacks portions. And we made these things called hash cakes, which was a little bit of flour, a little bit of water that we purified, and a little bit of yeast. Mold it or work it into a dough, and just throw it on the ashes on a fire so that it cooks into a little bun thing. It was disgusting. But yeah, we were surviving on scraps. And so he says, you're not going to eat anything. And I said, what do you mean I'm not going to eat anything? He says, all you're going to do while you're up there is you're going to drink water and you're going to fast. And that's where I first heard about fasting. I never even knew what fasting was up until that point. So he takes me up this mountain, maybe a quarter mile up or so. And he says, okay, before we set up your camp here. Oh, no, no, no. What he picked out an area right on this kind of cliff area, and great view, spectacular view. Oh, and it's crazy because as far as the eye could see in every direction was woods. There wasn't civilization as far as I could freaking see. So that was humbling in and of itself, is looking out and just being like, oh my God, I'm in the middle of nowhere. And so anyways, he left me with a book, and it was called like Merlin's Journey or something like that. And it's a journey of self-discovery that Merlin apparently went through, and these trials that he had to overcome. Very good book, short read. But anyways, he left me with that book. He left me with my tarp. He left me with the clothes on my back and the water purification tablets and my canteen. That was it. And we picked out this little area, and he had some fallen trees. He kind of scooted over and he's like, don't go outside of this perimeter right here. You're going to stay right here for 3 days. I'll come back tomorrow and check on you, and then I'm going back down. And I was like, okay. So he says, before I leave you, I want you to come to the cliffside here and lay down. So I'm literally laying on the side of a cliff. And I don't know how high up we were on a cliff. It was more like a steep ledge. But anyways, I'm laying there, and he says, I want you to do another rebirthing exercise. In this one, what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in through your nose as deep as you can, and immediately exhale through your mouth, and don't stop until I tell you to. And so you go like this. You go, and you just keep going, keep going, keep going. And eventually, what starts to happen is your sinuses start to burn really bad. And you start to get, I mean, right now, I'm already starting to get a little lightheaded. You start to get lightheaded and you start to kind of disassociate with yourself. And so I started doing it and I'm like, oh, it hurts. He's like, just keep going. And so I'm like, okay. So I keep going, breathe in and out, in and out. And then what ended up happening is I passed out. I passed out. I blacked out. And then he shook me awake. He's like, you fell asleep. Keep going. So I, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, I'm gone. I am completely out of my mind. I don't know what happened. I don't know where I went. I didn't have a vision that I can remember. But what I do remember eventually happening is he shook me. And when I opened my eyes, it was like I was seeing light for the first time in my life. It was blinding. It was because I was looking at the sky. I was on my back on the ground and I just woken up from being blacked out from being so high on oxygen and this rebirthing exercise. I felt like I was coming out of the freaking cavity, man, and I was being born again. And what he did is he grabs my hand and he pulls me up out, off the ground. And what had happened is behind me there was an outline of my body. He outlined my body in twigs and sticks as I was passed out, as I was doing the breathing exercise. He was outlining my body and he says, what I want you to do while you're up here is walk whenever you're bored, walk around your fire. And every time you do a full rotation, pick up a handful of gravel and say, I want to leave this aspect of myself, whatever negative things or memories or whatever you want to leave behind on this mountain. You say it to the handful of gravel and you dump it in the body. And then you do another one and another and another. Every rotation, pick up another thing. This is what I want to stop doing. Boom. You can say the same thing multiple times if you want. And by day 3, when I come back, there will be a full outline of your body up on this mountain that you will have created through charged, through this experience. And then we will leave that behind and it will be there as long as it's there. And I thought that was so damn cool. And so anyways, he takes off. He says, all right,
Dude,
good
that
luck.
is so fucking damn cool, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is. You were right about that at least.
Thank you. Yeah, it was an amazing exercise, and so I did. I first what happened is I was still on the victim kick, and so I thought the more fucked up I get up here, the more Mother Nature kicks my ass, the more my mother is gonna feel like she made a big mistake, and the more I can be like, "This is what you did to me," And so like I didn't take it serious still up on the side of this cliff. And so when I should have been building myself a shelter, no, what I thought I would do, first of all, I'm like, how can I create a shelter? All my years, as a kid, building forts out of pillows and sticks in the woods with my friends, all that suddenly evaded me. So all I could think about was, I believe it's Hop on Pop by Dr. Seuss. And in there, they have a tent and it is a blanket with stakes and a stick in the middle. So it's and you kind of shimmy yourself in. That's all I could think of. But the problem is the ground on that cliffside was hard as shit. There was some dirt, but anyway, so I'm trying to pitch this ridiculous little tent thing that I had in my mind. And as I'm doing that, I got a little fire started and I, backed up into my shelter and I started reading that Merlin book. And as I'm reading, next thing you know, I'm watching in the distance these clouds rolling in and getting closer and darker. And it starts drizzling. And then it starts raining. And then it starts fucking pouring down rain. And I'm thinking, oh shit, dude, my fire is going to go out. And then what? I'm going to freeze up here. What do I do? And stupid 16-year-old Nathan, I decide that I'm going to take my shelter down and use it as a giant shield to try to shield the rain off the fire. And I realized within about 5 seconds that was a ridiculous idea. And all the smoke coming off the fire was choking me out. The rain was still drenching the fire. And now I'm cold and I can't get the damn shelter back stuck together. The wind is blowing, howling like a freaking banshee. And so all I could think of doing, wrap the tarp around myself and sit down on my ass and just sit there and wait out the storm. And it's just fucking blowing and storming and raining. Then lightning starts striking, and I started like every time it'd strike, I was like, and like fucking panicking. And I started crying. I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I just did the whole, this is my world. This is where I'm at. This is my little safe space. And meanwhile, there's a fucking monsoon going on outside. I'm now drenched. I'm fucking drenched by water. The tarp kept me dry for just as long as it could, but yeah, everything was drenched. My shoes, my shorts, my underwear, my pants, everything. And it stops. The storm stops, and so I kind of peek out and I look. It's starting to get dark now, and I'm like, you know what? I'm miserable. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to sleep, and I'm going to sleep through this experience. And when I wake up, it'll be tomorrow, and that's one day down. And maybe I could just sleep through the next day too. So it was really hard to go to sleep because I was fucking freezing. And but I did. I passed out, and then shortly after, I wake up, and I'm like, oh my God, is it morning? And I look up, and the moon is right over the top of me, and I instantly started crying, and I'm like, no, no, like, well, how long was I even asleep? What is this shit? It sucks. Oh my God. And I realized when I went to breathe in through my nose that my freaking nostril hairs were frozen. They were fucking frozen. And same with my hair. It was little like icicle dreadlocks back then. And I'm like, oh my God. And I was just crying and shivering in my little tarp. And finally, this voice came into my head. And it was like clear as day, man. I was talking to something up there, and it said, you need to warm up or you're going to die. And it was like, I knew in that moment, that is what I need to do. I need to get warm. First thing I did, grab my flint rod, got my little bundle, started trying to, first of all, my hands were so cold, I could barely hold the flint rod, and the sparks, everything was soaked. Everything was drenched. My fire pit was full of water. It was nuts. And so instantly I dropped down and I started doing push-ups. And after the push-ups, jumping jacks, going at it, man. And as I'm doing jumping jacks, I remember Forrest, before he left me, he said, if you ever get to the point where you're just angry or upset or whatever, run to the edge of that cliff and let Mother Nature hear it. Cuss, scream, cry, whatever you got to do, let it out. And so in that moment, I'm now adrenaline's pumping. I'm doing freaking exercises, trying to get my body temperature up. I run to the edge of the cliff and I say, fuck you, Forrest, you motherfucker. Sitting down there in your fucking tent or fort or whatever you got. I'm fucking dying up here. And I swear I let it all out. But what ended up stopping me was all of a sudden back in the tree line, maybe about 50 to 75 feet behind me, I hear tree branches snapping. And, in the middle of the night in the forest, out of your element, you can think little sounds sound a lot bigger, or little animals can actually make really big sounds. So I don't know what was back there, but something was back there. I hear boom, boom, and I hear all this snapping and tree branches. I froze. I thought I was about to encounter a bear or who the fuck knows what. But all I knew is I'm alone. I got nothing to defend myself with. And all I have for light is the freaking moon and stars. So I run over to my little supplies that I had, and I had a didgeridoo up there. It was a PVC pipe that he had me bring up there, and we melted it in the fire and kind of twisted it and turned it into one of the Aborigines, from Australia, the didgeridoo. Yeah, we made one of those. And so I took that fucker and I start screaming, get out of here, get out. And I'm banging the freaking didgeridoo and, yelling through it like it's a freaking, bullhorn. And I heard whatever it was kind of just trounce off, walk away. And so that right there was like an eye opener that I could be eaten. Now, it's not just the element of, like nature killing me, but it's the freaking wildlife out here too. So I run up to the edge of the cliff again. And Forrest, he had a dog that he brought with him named Basha. And Basha was half wolf, half husky. And so I start calling for the dog in the middle of the night. Basha, Basha. Just, who knows what could go, what harm could it do to be calling for the dog, have the dog come up here and give me some company. About 15 minutes later, the fucking dog shows up. he fucking comes up here and he's, licking me. And I'm like, oh my God, you're my savior. So I tell the dog, I grab by the scruff of the neck, 'cause we have to go down a freaking cliff. And it's the middle of the night, can't see shit. And so I'm like, Basha, take me to Forest. Where's Forest? Take me to Forest. And away the dog took me. I'm holding the scruff, and the dog led me back to Forest, dude. So I come trouncing in the middle of the night, and Forrest rolls over. He's in this like super badass freaking log little fort thing that he made with his tarp, and it was legit. And he's like, "Why aren't you up on the mountain?" And I said, "I think I'm gonna die if I stay up there. I'm soaked, and there's something up there." And he's like, "Oh, all right, get undressed and get in a sleeping bag." Okay. So I got all my wet clothes off, and I got in my sleeping bag and I went to sleep. And the next morning rolls around, and I see Forrest had gotten up, and I just said, you know what? He hasn't said nothing to me, so I'm going to go back to sleep. So I slept a little bit, and then maybe, I don't know how long went by, hour, and he hasn't said nothing to me. So I'm like, maybe I can just sleep this whole piece of shit day away. And so I go back to sleep. And shortly later, he pokes me and he says, "Get up." And I'm like, "Oh God." And he's like, "I thought you were coming up here to stop being a boy and finally accept it and become a man." And I said, "I am up here to do that." And he's like, "Well, men get up. Men have responsibilities. Men don't sleep in. Boys sleep in." And I was like, that was another one that really stuck with me, because I'm an early bird now, man. My whole life being raised at my dad's house, when I would visit him, when I lived with him when I was younger, there was a poster in my room. I hated it, but it said, "Early to bed, early to rise makes you healthy, wealthy, and wise." And I mean, they made me live by that. Even on the farm at my mom's, I had to get up at the butt crack of dawn and work in the fields. And so, yeah, he made that point to me, and it clicked. He's like, men don't sleep in. Men have responsibilities, and they take care of what needs to be taken care of. And so he said, "Get yourself ready. You're going back up the mountain." And I'm like, "Oh dear God." And he's like, "Yeah, you got 3 more days." Or he's like, "You have to do 3 days. That was one night. So you're going back up." So I go back up, and I kind of pick up because the storm and everything had fucked everything up. And he leaves me up there. I sit up there with my book again, my journal, and my tarp, and it starts fucking snowing. It starts snowing on me, man. And so now I'm sitting up there, and I'll tell you what, I was so angry that this is what I'm going through. Like, I thought I'd be camping. No, I'm getting my ass handed to me. But the snow, I remember sitting on that cliff with my journal, looking out, and the snow falling so silently. Because it's like when snow falls, it's like everything goes quiet. And the view I had of just nature as far as the eye could see, a 16-year-old boy out of his element, getting his ass kicked. But there's this peace that kind of came over me, and it's like, I am here. This is where I'm at. It's like my old life started to fade away, and it's like, okay, I'm finally in the experience. I'm not, what's going on back home? All my friends are having so much fun without me. Oh, it's the summer and I'm up here doing this shit. It's like, I'm here. This is how you survive. This is what you do. And so I made it through another night with less problem. I didn't have any storms rolling on me that night. But the next morning, bright and early, Forrest comes up. I'm fucking freezing because I still couldn't get my fire started for some reason. And so I sat through another miserable night. But Forrest comes up the next morning. And one of the tasks that he had me do, aside from filling the body up with gravel, was he gave me a wooden arrow. And there was no arrowhead on it. It was a wooden sharp tip, or dull, I guess you could say a dull tip, but he wanted me to decorate it. And so he left some paint and a little paintbrush, and he said, "Decorate this while you're up here." And I don't really remember what I decorated. I know it was yellow. It was yellow and blue I put on it, maybe some green, but I don't know exactly. But anyway, so Forrest comes up. This is now the morning of the third day. And he says, "Okay, we're going to do a few exercises. And once you complete them, you can come down from the mountain." He says, "I see that you have your body filled up with the gravel up here. Good job. Where's the egg?" And I look, and actually, I didn't look. I knew damn well what happened. In the middle of that night, when it stormed the first night, it fell out of my little stuff that I had up there, and it broke. It cracked all over the ground, and that was the least of my concerns at that time. But anyway, so failed the first exercise. Second exercise. Okay, let me set the setting for you. Forest comes up. It's snowing. I'm freezing ass cold again. Didn't have icicles in my hair or anything this time, but my hands were numb. And the second exercise, aside from the egg, he told me how disappointed I was, or he was in me for the egg, and how that was my child. That was your responsibility, Nathan, and you let it die, essentially. So I had to sit with that and kind of try to appreciate that. But anyways, exercise number two, he brought the board. It was maybe 1 by 1 foot board by maybe an inch thick. And excuse me, he wanted me, it was the one where I was supposed to paint a picture of a boy becoming a man. He wanted me to punch through the board before he would allow me to come down from the mountain. And when I say punch, he explained to not do it with your knuckles, because that was the first thing I did. He's like, go ahead, try to punch through it. I punched it with my knuckles. My hand was numb, but it wasn't that numb. It was excruciating because I thought I broke my wrist. I mean, literally, I punched it dead on. So, anyways, that didn't work. He explained, do it with your fist. So take another whack at it, didn't work. Take another whack at it, didn't work. My wrist is throbbing, my knuckles are bleeding now, my fist right here is all jacked up. And he's like, you're not coming down until you break through this board. I want you to remember your breathing, Nathan, and I want you to focus all of your energy in your body to this one point in your hand. I want you to focus, feel the flow straight to this one point, and then I want you to break through the board. Take 3 deep breaths and then go for it. He's sitting there like this. Come on, Nathan. And so boom, didn't work again. And I'm starting to feel defeated, man. I was like, this isn't gonna work. He's like, it's not with that attitude. Well, finally he gets me, and it's just like in the movies, get somebody real pissed off, and then they and break through. Well, that's what happened. So, he's getting me all pumped up and come on, get mad, breathe, get going, and then focus. And sure enough, I don't know, maybe he did a little bit of he helped me out a little bit, but whatever he did, finally I broke through and I fell right into him. And he's like, okay, you did it. And in that moment, I'm like, I fucking did it. I broke through a board with my fist. Oh my God. Next exercise. Take the arrow, Nathan, and I want you to put the tip to your throat right here. Put the tip to your throat. I'm going to put the butt end of the arrow up against my chest. And he says, walk into me and break the arrow. And once you do, we'll come down from the mountain. I'm like, you're going to fucking kill me, man. That's not going to work. He's like, no, I want you to do that same exercise where you focus all the energy to this one point. Feel the point of the arrow. Feel where it pokes you, Nathan? I said, yeah. Focus on that point. Use the pain to focus all your attention and energy on that one point and step into me and make it break. And so I'm like, oh, I'm getting ready I'm kind of going for it. And I feel like I'm going to kill myself up here. Well, eventually, believe it or not, and I don't think there was any, cut marks on the arrow or what the hell, but sure enough, step into him on the count of 3 kind of thing. I watched the arrow bend up like this and snap. And I couldn't believe it. So that was it. And then he said, get all your things. Let's head back down. And we were on our way back to hiking back to the car. And so the rest of the day we spent hiking back because a massive storm was rolling in, ironically, on the last day. And so we hauled ass back to the car and we start driving back to civilization. And I'm reflecting on this whole experience and what I've learned, everything that I've overcome, shitting in the woods, like being with a stranger, all the things that my family felt, going through a sweat lodge, breaking an arrow, rebirthing exercises, charging rocks and putting them there, getting snowed on, and wildlife, everything. It was incredible, but I'm just, that blank stare out the window the whole way back. And then he takes me to a diner right when we get to town. And he says, let's get you something to eat. Do you want to eat something? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Hadn't eaten in 7 days other than, handfuls of trail mix and a little bit of this bread that we made. And so he stops and he gets me a hamburger. And so we're sitting there talking about how the experience was. And the hamburger comes and it's right in front of me. And I pick it up I took one bite and I started just sobbing. I mean, not like, ah, but like, tears running. I was crying. And he's like, "Why are you crying?" I'm chewing my food. And he's like, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "I took so much for granted. I didn't realize how much I took for granted before the experience, because I mean, I didn't have a hot shower for a week. I didn't get good sleep for a week. I was on pretty much running on fumes with the food intake. Everything about that experience humbled me, humiliated me, made me its bitch, and then, spit me out a stronger person. And I remember coming home and, getting my first shower and just like, if you ever seen The Walking Dead season one, when they get accepted into the CDC shelter place and they get to take a shower for the first time, that's exactly what happened to me. I was like, I was cheering, I was singing, I was like, yeah, washing all the twigs out of my hair, looking at the drain, all that shit falling off, bugs. And it was just like, I can't explain, like you said from the very beginning, my mother definitely underpaid for the experience, because what it taught me in the moment when I first came back, it was still like fuck you attitude, like how dare you put me through that. But I'll tell you what, as my mother and stepfather said in their letter, you will understand why we did this when you're older. We did this because we love you. We're so proud of you. I look back on that experience and I'm like, what a priceless, what a like an essential thing for people to go through. My son needs this in his life more than anything right now. I think he's getting into his own little bit of trouble, which is its own story. But yeah, for us to remove that from society, a rites of passage for a boy, it's like, when Indians, they take their, what is it called, a walkabout or whatever. But every culture had their own version of this, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go through it, and because of it, it's done nothing but good for me. Nothing but good. Even to this day, I'm 30, almost 34. To this day, I still open the fridge and I say, how lucky we are to have something that can keep our food cold. Turn the faucet on. How lucky we are to have running water, not have to walk half a mile to get it. To turn the lights on. Like, I mean, just the simplest things, how fucking lucky we are. And I was told to hang on to. So Forrest, he had a little disposable camera that he was taking pictures of me with. Gave it to my mom, developed the pictures. I only have like 9 of them left, but there was that, and the didgeridoo. I had it, but it's gone. The little journal I had, I kept that for many years, but that's gone now too. And the crazy thing is, while I was up there, I picked a wildflower from the mountain and put it in the pages. And I would say maybe like 6 years ago or so, I found that journal, opened it up, forgot that that flower was in there, and it fell in. Actually, no, it didn't fall. I opened it up, and the freaking flower was still pressed between the pages, a yellow flower. It was the craziest thing. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. This is, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what I went through up there. And it's been one of those things that over time you understand the real effect it's had on you, and the more life you go through, the more influence you see that it's had on shaping you into who you are today. It's a shame that that others aren't, it's not like a prerequisite for graduating high school to go through something like this. That's all I got.
All right. So the reason I wanted to bring people this story, Nathan, is because of what's going on today in the society. It's been a long time since boys have been raised into men, and I believe that we're at like a catastrophic point in that time. And your journey through this showed so many different things, a lot of life lessons. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
being 16 years old and to realize this stuff is quite incredible when a lot of people won't realize it till they're 40, when they're
Definitely taking
alone, past their
advantage.
prime. Yeah, past their prime and aren't able to go back. You can't go back in time, people. It's just a story that's not common anymore, but it used to be very common. You got taken on this journey of survival. The sad thing is, the average male, female, anyone, even adult, the average adult these days is unable to survive by themselves, even for a little bit. Insignificant inconvenience causes them to call the police. to call for help. They need a safe zone, a safe space. We're looking at a military painting their toenails and wearing heels, to be inclusive. And it's just crazy to see that how it's supposed to be. I mean, you learn more stuff in that week or those just a few days ultimately than most people learn almost their entire lives about just being a human, being able to
Absolutely.
survive. Yeah, it's crazy. And then to get those morality lessons about how when the electricity drops and the technology's gone, everything that pampered your sweet,
Yep.
comfortable, soft ass is gone, is that there's nature, Mother Nature, and Mother Nature doesn't play. I'm sure you did it in the summer. A lot of them would do it in the winter back hundreds and hundreds of years ago and
Yeah, I don't
stuff.
know. I think it was, yeah, it would have been the summer. That's right. But it was interesting because while we were up there, we were trudging through snow up in this how
Hmm.
the altitude we were at. There was snow still up there,
That's how
and
high you
it
were.
snowed on me that night. Like I woke up with icicles, dreadlocks, and icicles in my nose. So we got all seasons up there through that experience. It was a roller coaster ride.
But that's the crazy thing too, is that entire experience is, I mean, it really puts everything into perspective.
Yeah,
And then to think about how people used to live in that with their
yeah,
babies and everything else during winter.
yeah.
They live through that. That's crazy. And those
I
are
was
the
just
people
thinking
that
about
built
that
this country.
when
Yeah.
we finished when I just finished talking about that. I was thinking, everything that I went through up there, how insane and extreme and life changing it was. But really, just 100 years ago, people would be like, "Yeah, I do that every weekend. What are you talking
Mm-hmm.
about? I sleep on the ground."
Yeah. That's why they were so, strong, and we forget
Yep.
about these comforts. And you can look
Well,
at third world countries and they're still doing it. They're still drinking poo water. I mean, all
yeah,
their water's the same and they're like accustomed to it. Their stomachs are lined with it. They're, used to it, and they die so quickly compared to us. And it's insane that's so foreign when it shows today what's going on today. What happens when you make that so foreign, when you make real life and nature what's really out there after you stop building shit? What actually happens with people and what can actually
Mhm.
happen, what real life, day-to-day life could be. And then you look at what they're complaining about now, and it's just silly. But yeah, everyone, let us know what you think down in the comment section. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you for coming. We are out.